Alonzo Tyree Brooks was the youngest child born to an African-American father, Billy Brooks Sr., and a Mexican mother, Maria Ramirez, on May 19, 1980. He grew up alongside his parents and 4 siblings in Topeka, Kansas, before moving to Gardner with his mother, with whom he shared a very close bond. As a youngster, he loved karate, riding his bike, and playing football, and by April of 2004, 23-year-old Alonzo was working as a custodian for countryside maintenance in his hometown of Gardner. Alonzo was described as being kind, well-mannered, and a good-humoured individual who got along with everybody he met. On April 3rd of 2004, Alonzo, who was known as Zoe amongst his friends and family, told his mother that he was heading out to a party that night with some friends, around 47 miles away in the remote town of Lacine. The friends mostly went to these parties rather impromptu. They never made prearranged plans to go, but decided in the spur of the moment to go to this particular party. As the friends were leaving Zoe's house to travel to the party, Alonzo jumped in the car of his friend Justin. The friends drove around about an hour or so to attend the farmhouse party in Lacine. The party seemed like every other. Teens and young adults drinking, dancing, playing drunken games and having a laugh together. There were up to around 50 people in attendance that night, many of which Alonzo nor his group of friends actually knew. Despite being generally quite a reserved and shy man around people he didn't know, Alonzo appeared to be having a good time and seemed more confident with a few beers down him, like many of us experience. Alcohol always gives us that little boost of confidence. According to his friends, Zoe was subject to a number of racial slurs and threats at this party in Lacine, a dominantly white area which was known for a lot of racism against people of colour. Important to note, Zoe was reportedly the only person of colour in attendance that night, and at one point during the gathering, Alonzo and another partygoer had a confrontation. Zoe's friend Daniel stepped in and broke the pair apart before it got physical, though the ins and outs of the confrontation aren't clear. At around 11 p.m, word got round about another party happening nearby, and Daniel decided to leave with his ride towards this other party, with Tyler, Zoe's other friend, also leaving the party around this time. Just Alonzo and Justin, his ride, remained. The pair were smoking cigarettes at one stage during the night when they both noticed that their boxes were empty. Justin decided to leave his car to buy some more cigarettes for himself and for Alonzo. However, due to the fact that the area of Lacine was unfamiliar to him, Justin got lost along the country roads. He called another friend at the party, Adam, and asked him to tell Alonzo about the situation, Justin hearing Alonzo laughing and joking in the background of the phone call. Justin asked Adam to give Alonzo a ride home, to which he agreed, only for whatever reason, the two missed one another by the end of the night, with Adam believing that Zoe had already left or had perhaps hitched a ride with someone else back to Gardner, as he couldn't locate him at the Lacine house. The following morning, a friend of Alonzo's called his mother Maria and asked if he was home, but he wasn't. His bed hadn't been slept in. For Zoe not to come home was extremely unusual, and he wasn't one to go off and sleep at a friend's house without at least phoning home. Calls were made to Alonzo's friends and family members in Gardner and Topeka, but nobody had seen or heard from him since the previous night. The Brooks family, alongside Alonzo's friends, went to the farmhouse in Lacine to search for the 23-year-old, but found the property eerily deserted. Nothing even suggested that a house party had even occurred the night before. It was pristine. They scoured the fields nearby, and one of Zoe's oldest friends, Rodney, who lived back in Topeka, discovered Alonzo's hat and one of his boots lying in a field across the street, opposite the exit of the driveway. Zoe's other boot was later discovered on the side of a creek bank just a few meters away. None of these items appeared to have been concealed in any way, though the way the items were scattered did lead some to speculate that these items were perhaps thrown from a moving vehicle, or that Alonzo had perhaps gone walking along the road and, in his drunken state, removed his shoes and hat, though this is deemed rather unlikely. Following the discovery of Zoe's hat and boots, the searchers were told to leave the property by strangers in a vehicle, who to this day have never been identified. After failing to locate him, Maria reported her son as missing to the local authorities. However, she was told that they couldn't file a missing persons report until 48 hours had passed. Maria and her family were understandably outraged by this. They knew that for Alonzo not to come home in itself was a huge red flag, not to mention that he was without his shoes, in torrential rain, with an ankle injury, which he had sustained playing basketball just a few weeks prior. How was this not a cause for concern? Alonzo's friends were interviewed countless times by the police and gave their accounts of what happened that night, and a number of those who attended the party were also given polygraph tests and similar interviews, but nothing of significance came from these. It is alleged that some of the partygoers actually refused polygraphs. However, this is unconfirmed. If true, however, why refuse the test? Did they have something to hide? There were rumours circulating that Alonzo had perhaps been flirting with a white female at the party. Did other men at the party think the pair were getting too close, and somehow they became violent and beat Alonzo up? Again, however, there was no evidence to suggest that this theory was at all plausible. On April 4th, police officers from Lynn County Sheriff's Department scoured the creek bed next to the farmhouse, which was also searched, but there was no sign of Alonzo or any evidence to indicate where he was or what had happened to him. 3 days later, the case was handed over to the KBI, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and extensive searches followed suit. The evidence recovery team and dive teams searched the creek bed once again in the days following, whilst it was at a low level, with authorities also using the likes of cadaver dogs on the ground and helicopters, all in an effort to trace down Alonzo, but unfortunately to no avail. The FBI joined the investigation on April 10th and began to look into the possibility that Alonzo had been the victim of a hate crime. The Brooks family contacted police every day asking for updates, but they didn't give them anything. They told the family that they were investigating extensively and that should any new information arise, they would contact them. Interestingly, Alonzo's family claimed that they were told not to aid in the search by the Kansas Bureau of Police for almost an entire month. And yet, within an hour of finally being granted permission to search for Alonzo, on May 1st, 2004, the Brooks family made a heartbreaking discovery within close proximity to the property where the party was held. The search team, which was made up of Alonzo's family, friends, and local volunteers, split up and scoured the area along the creek bank for any sign of Alonzo. One of the search volunteers, who was searching through brush headed towards a white shed by the creek, found lying on the bank on top of some tree branches the decomposing, fully clothed body of 23-year-old Alonzo Brooks. The area was subsequently sealed off as investigations got underway. An autopsy was conducted, and its results left law enforcement and Brooks's loved ones somewhat baffled. There was no evidence of any internal or external injuries to Alonzo's body. No bruising was present, and no bones had been broken or fractured, and there were no signs of any blunt force trauma or penetrating injuries such as a gunshot wound or even strangulation. There was also no evidence to suggest that the deceased had drowned, as there was no water present in his lungs. Details of a toxicology are unavailable at this particular time, though Zoe's cause of death was deemed to be undetermined. His death was ruled as suspicious, but without any other evidence or clues to work with to suggest a crime was committed, Zoe's case was subsequently closed by authorities. The Brooks family couldn't understand why law enforcement made this decision, as so many questions remained unanswered. Did Zoe die as a result of a violent crime? Did he possibly succumb to alcohol poisoning? Why did police fail to locate his body by the creek when they had conducted over 6 official searches in the area? His family located his body within an hour. Were the police simply negligent, or was there something more sinister at play here? Is it possible that Alonzo's body was frozen following his death, and his remains were placed by the creek a month following his disappearance, simply in plain sight for his family to find? After a month, surely his body would have suffered more severe decomposure or bloating than what was present when his body was found. Animal degradation only appeared around Alonzo's neck. Surely more would have occurred. Had his body floated down the creek following heavy rainfall? This theory certainly doesn't seem likely, as all of Alonzo's belongings that were in his possession when he was found, his wallet and papers included, none showed any signs of water damage, which would have been there if he had been submerged in water for a month. Who carried out this despicable crime? And more importantly, why? What happened between April 4th and May 1st? Alonzo almost certainly hadn't been in the creek that entire time. His body wasn't bloated, and he hadn't drowned. Ultimately, who is to blame is up for much debate. Was this a race-based hate crime? Foul play is deemed most likely by Brooks's family and friends, and they believe that the truth lies within the residents of Lacine, though they remain tight-lipped. The FBI recently reopened Alonzo's case following an episode which aired on Netflix in July 2020 regarding this case, and announced a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest and conviction in regards to the death of Alonzo Brooks. Was his death murder? Someone out there knows what happened to him, and it's time for the truth to out. In a rather rare occurrence, Alonzo's body was exhumed on July 21st, 2020 by law enforcement following the Unsolved Mysteries episode regarding Brooks' case entitled No Ride Home, airing on Netflix. Investigators receiving a number of promising tips which may have led to new evidence or clues coming to light. Authorities are out to discover the truth as to whether Alonzo was the victim of homicide. At this time, further details regarding the exhumation remain unclear, but we can only hope that following further examinations, we can finally find out what happened to 23-year-old Alonzo Brooks, and hopefully in doing so, give his family some sort of closure.